When I was in the band and when Mrs. Bailey was in the band always did Kennywood. It was one of the things that was just something that we always did. But back then, you have to remember, the only thing we did in the band was local parades, okay, and football games and Kennywood. That was it. The band didn't travel. The band didn't get to go out of its area. And with my drum corps background and Mrs. Bailey's background and the travel that we had done, I had always hoped that someday if I became a band director, I'd like to get the band out to show the public what they can do in other areas, to take us to big events. And we did Kennywood. We kept it as a tradition for many years. What started to happen, Kennywood was sold to a different company, and different management teams came in. And over the years, they started telling us, it used to be they would even help pay for your buses to come down, and you would perform, and you would get the day in the park and your chaperones and everybody. It's a nice day, you know, and you march the parade. But the new management wanted to charge us chaperones, bus drivers, anybody else, let alone we were bringing all these people in the evening for the parade. And so after a while, it got to the point where since we were doing some of the major events and we were taking the kids to Disney World and we were taking them to all of these other things, that we screened the kids, and they actually all said, you know what, we don't feel we need to do that event anymore, and we took it out of our schedule. It was also a very tough place to march because it's narrow, and we had such a big band. At times where the cafeteria area is, the front of the band was on one side of the cafeteria and the back of the band was on the other, and we were like in a big U shape around it. So it wasn't the easiest place to perform and to perform at your best. We always did it out of uniform. We had our band matching band shorts and t-shirts and ball caps at that point, because it was always hot also when we did that. It was during band camp. But eventually we decided it wasn't something we wanted to continue to do, and instead we replaced the last day of band camp from noon on as a big picnic party for the kids in the band.
Kennywood was one of our favorite events. We loved it, mostly just because it was just a day away from the school. You know, it was kind of a reward for finishing up band camp. We went down, we got all day in the park with our friends. We would have a call time, we'd meet back up, do the parade. I will say the parade was challenging because at times we used to march 8 across, we'd have to go down to 4s. And at one point, the front of the band would wrap around the one part and the back of the band would be around the other part. I mean, it was challenging to do. But then after the parade, there was a tradition where the seniors would toss their instrument to an underclassman and take off and run. And we took off and ran into the fountain. There was a specific fountain, I think, in Lost Kennywood where we were supposed to jump into. And I still have video footage of that to this day, of us jumping into this fountain. And then there were people that chased us out of the fountain, and we had to run back to the buses and escape. And I'm not sure if that's why we don't go to Kennywood anymore or not, but I assume maybe it has a little part of it. And right now you cannot jump in that fountain because it has barriers up around it to this day. We ruined it. But every senior class did it.
We were lucky to do a couple Steelers games, and they were at the old stadium, Three Rivers, and we did Pirates actually when they were at Three Rivers, and once when they were at the new stadium. The last Steelers game we did was the last game played by the Steelers at home in Three Rivers Stadium against the Oakland Raiders, and Cordell Stewart was quarterback. The Steelers back then treated you really well. You get to go down early, you'd rehearse on the field, they would feed you multiple times, they would keep hot chocolate coming during the games. They were superb and were really generous. When they moved to the new stadium and they sold their seat licenses and everything, we were asked to come down multiple times to perform for playoff games, but the kicker was they told me I could only bring like 120 of my band. And when you have 300 some marching members, it's hard to do that. How do you restructure your show and and perform and make that work. Plus, you couldn't take any other adults, chaperones, or anything in. It was it, 120. Excuse me. So we never really went back to the Steelers. We did a couple of baseball games with the Pirates. Mr. Whitaker at the time was part of our band staff, and Mr. Whitaker actually belonged to what was called the Diamond Club. He was a ticket agent for the Pittsburgh Pirates and was very involved. And we were able to go down and perform and get in to watch the game for free. And we did a couple of performances at Three Rivers. When they moved to the new stadium, PNC Park, Kevin McClatchy was the president of the organization then. We went down, I think it was the year of 2000, and we performed outside. We performed inside the banner and everything. And the problem with that event, it was a nice event for us to go to. Back then, the Pirates weren't doing that well, but they wanted to charge the kids for coming into the game after we had just performed. And we had some issues with that, in addition to the fact that the game we were at, they were going to allow all the Little League ball players in the area in for free, and they hadn't performed. So we had a little disagreement. We did that event, but we wrote Mr. McClatchy, and after that and said if he would waive the fee for the students, we'd come down and perform again. But we never heard back from them, and so we didn't go back.
And here to perform our national anthem is the Butler High School Marching Band, under the direction of Jeff Croner. Please don't sing.
We had, when we first combined the band, we actually had a pit where we hauled out the marimba, xylophone, bells, concert timpani, and everything. And I wanted to do that for a long time, like a lot of the core things. We did it for a couple years, and the problem was the concert instruments were getting destroyed. We were taking the concert timpani out, and when you're at a football game and it's snowing or raining, and you're performing and that stuff's out there, or a marimba or a xylophone or the bells or whatever. So after a while, I switched to, because I used to do a lot of band judging, a lot of guys were using electric keyboards because you can synthesize any sound. So we created those little carts, and we used to have sometimes 4 keyboard synthesizers. Sometimes they would double. The nice thing is they could double if you were lacking lower brass, you could have them double apart there. Or if you needed a sound that wasn't available, you could have that available. A couple times we had chime sounds and that. So we used sometimes 4 keyboards, sometimes 3, sometimes 2. And we had these carts we would pull with microphones and speakers and a preamp and everything. I know Mr. Croner didn't continue any of that. And we'd have our microphones and stuff. And that was more practical. We even had covers built so if it rained that they wouldn't, hurt the instruments. The extensive pits which drum corps are using, are phenomenal. But first of all, you got to have a vehicle to haul all that too. That was the other thing. Back in those days, we had a band bus. We couldn't put a lot of that on it. And when the trucks we were using were food service trucks initially to haul some of that, and you couldn't secure the stuff. We found things were getting destroyed, the good instruments, and we just said, you know what, we can't keep doing this. I mean, we can't afford to buy separate equipment for this. And it just got to be, we don't need to do that anymore. So we went to the electronics, and then everybody has a right to do what they want, and Mr. Kroner didn't want to do that, so he eliminated that. The other thing it did, but it gave kids who played piano very well, but nothing else, a chance to be in the marching band.
There's so many issues with bullying in schools right now that I think so much of it could be solved if people just patterned the way we treat one another in the band. Not everybody likes one another. I mean, honestly, that's just the reality. I don't like every student. I treat everybody fairly, but there are students that maybe don't do things the way that I believe in, and I don't care for the way they act. But as human beings, I love every one of my kids like you're my own. I think that this band has changed lives. I know it's changed my son's life. He went from very introverted, struggling to deal with his peers, to somebody that was a leader in this band and was really proud of that. I've watched it do that to so many people. So I would say, you know, that's one of those things where I look at what this band can do to help grow people from that teenager that's clueless on how to act to a young adult who's ready to go out and take the next step.
I'm just really pleased to have this opportunity. I want to thank all of you, Logan for coming out, and Ashley for coming out, and Anna for coming out. The present drum majors of the band are going to be graduating here in another month or so. I wish you all the best of luck, and it's been a good opportunity. It's been a lot of fun to kind of rethink it and reminisce it and talk about it, because it was a big part of our lives. And it's something I always enjoyed, and I still do miss. And it was funny because, again, the first year I felt I had to stay away from it, just because you have to break ties. The one thing that's important, when Mr. Zanzotti retired and I took his position, he met with me and he said, I'm never going to be looking over my shoulder wondering what you're doing with the band that used to be my band, because it's going to be your band. You do whatever you want. But he says, if you ever need advice, I'm a phone call away. But he says, it's your ball game. Take it and run with it and do with it what you want to do with it. And I always respected him for that. And when I left, no matter who got the job, I think it's important that whoever takes over, it's no longer my band or our band. It's somebody else's band, and they should be able to do with it what they want to do with it. I may agree or disagree, you know, but that's not something that, you know, I wanted to always kind of stay away a little bit and say, you know, okay, it's your space. Just like changing uniforms and all that other stuff. That's, you know, your prerogative now. You're the guy who's in charge, or the girl who's in charge, or whatever. So, but I do want to thank you guys. This has been fun.
I'm really proud of the three of you for putting the time and the effort into doing something like this. This band has such a tradition, not only when it was just the high school band, but when it went through that combination and putting the Crusader band and the high school band together, and the struggles that were there, and when the band took its very first trip, and all of the newness that happened with that, when they were the lead band of the Macy's parade for the very first time this band ever traveled. Just seeing all of that, I know what it's about, and those people that have been in the band have seen their little piece of it. But to put something like this together so that everybody that's been a part of the band can just reflect can reflect upon their little piece of this. I'm really proud of you guys for doing that. I think it's incredible, and it's something that'll be shared for a long time.